Mr. Boris Johnson has raised the stakes in a brewing confrontation with China on Wednesday, promising to allow nearly 3 million people from Hong Kong to live and work in Britain if Beijing moves forward with the new national security law on the former British colony. He said that China has ignored international obligations by taking new powers which could curb civil liberties.
We stand for rules and obligations, and we think that is the soundest basis for our international relations. And the enactment and imposition of this national security law constitutes a clear and serious breach of the Sino-British Joint Declaration. It violates Hong Kong's high degree of autonomy and is in direct conflict with Hong Kong basic law. The law also threatens the freedoms and rights protected by the Joint Declaration. We made clear, Mr. Speaker, that if China continued down this path, we would introduce a new route for those with British national overseas status to enter the UK, granting them limited leave to remain with the ability to live and work in the UK and thereafter to apply for citizenship, and that is precisely what we will do now.
Mr. Johnson's offer opens the door to a significant influx of people fleeing Hong Kong, should the situation in the territory deteriorate further. But it leaves unanswered thorny questions about how difficult it would be for these arrivals to obtain the British citizenship.
The government has acted, and he wants to know when to go into lockdown.
Now we are being joined by Venus Agri, who is an ex-Indian envoy to Hong Kong, live from New Delhi. Thank you very much for being with us on the show. Now, how do you assess the current situation in Hong Kong?
I think it's a very difficult situation because, it has exposed completely how China has refused to keep up its international obligations under the original treaty signed, the Sino-British Pact on Hong Kong was signed in 1984 and registered in the United Nations. And under that, they had promised, even according to the Chinese constitution, I think Article 31, where they had promised that it would be a separate Hong Kong special administrative region with fairly complete autonomy on the executive, the legislature, the judicial powers, and also promising greater freedom of democracy, electing a chief executive and so on. So I think over these 23 years, today is exactly 23 years, and I was there on the 1st of July 1997 when the flag of Britain came down over Hong Kong. And it was a time of great I would say, happiness, expectation and hope. Everything has been belied now, and the people of Hong Kong, especially the youngsters, the ones who were born after 1st of July 1997, they are completely disappointed because they see no future for themselves. And first, in around 2014, when the people were expecting that the 2017 elections for the chief executive would be, by free choice, this was denied to them. The umbrella movement came up, and then last year, in 2019, when the LegCo started discussing an extradition law which will allow Hong Kong to send people to mainland China and other countries like Taiwan to be extradited. Now this, the people of Hong Kong, the young people, took really amiss because they thought that this was a complete curb on their freedom of expression, on their rights, on the free legislature that they were promised, on the free judiciary they were promised. And this really exploded. Between June last year, 19, and October 2019, there were riots, international flights were cancelled, some people were seriously hurt in police firing. And as a result of all this, finally, the law was withdrawn from the LegCo. So, in fact, the present chief executive, I would say, did not really handle it very well. And the manner of the handling has broken the trust between the people of Hong Kong, especially the younger generations in Hong Kong, the government of Hong Kong, led by the present chief executive, Carrie Lam, and the government of mainland China. Now, with this breakdown in trust, we saw a very interesting development last November 2019 when the district council elections were held. And these elections were allowed to go ahead, and the pro-democracy people participated, and they ran through the elections like wildfire. So we see that the pro-democracy group in the district council elections have about almost 2/3 of the seats. And the government allies of the government of Hong Kong, their number of seats came down from 300 to just 56. Now, this is very interesting and important because not only does it show very clearly that if you give the free expression to the people of Hong Kong, they are pro-democracy. But secondly, just this very year, September 2020, the elections in the Legislative Council itself are due. And so what will those elections be like? In the meanwhile, government of China, government of the People's Republic of China, not being able to take this extreme expression of pro-democracy feeling, has now enacted this special law. And this is something which is really upsetting the people of Hong Kong. And under this law, it is a complete reversal of the basic law. It goes back on the promises that were made to the people of Hong Kong and to the international community, of course, including the government of the UK, who signed the original agreement. And we've just heard Prime Minister Boris Johnson's very strong reaction to the enactment of this national security law by the NPC, the National People's Congress of China. And I think that the reaction today that we are seeing in Hong Kong on the 23rd anniversary is a continuing reflection of the disquiet, the despair, I would say, the unhappiness of the people of Hong Kong, the despair for their future. I think for India, this is a very important moment. And I think we have to highlight how China has not fulfilled its promises on Hong Kong. Economically, it's going to be very bad for Hong Kong, but also politically. For Taiwan, for Tibet, I mean, all these people are looking at this model of one country, two system started in 97, but now lies in tatters.
Absolutely. And on that, Hong Kong, of course, can't be seen in isolation. President Xi Jinping has shown a heavy-handed approach, not just in Hong Kong, but also in India, the South China Sea and Taiwan, as we've seen. Would you say this is a pattern?
Yes, I think definitely it does cast a direct shadow over the way President Xi Jinping deals with international commitments and international obligations and brings in new obligations. I mean, look at what's happening in the talks with India. I mean, the demand for Arunachal Pradesh that China is now making was never on the cards. It was never anywhere. And suddenly you raise a demand and then want to talk about it. And similarly, I would say that even in Ladakh, I mean, India has had a border with Tibet all this while. India has never had a border with China. And China overran Tibet just about 70 years ago, a little more than 70 years ago. So on what basis should India be negotiating with China about the border with Tibet? This is a very important question that the people of India and the global community have to ask themselves. Why is this so? Because we have seen what China does in their international commitments and in their negotiations. So I think that this what is happening in Hong Kong, while economically it will be very difficult for the people of Hong Kong, the international trust in Hong Kong is gone. I mean, people will move away to Taiwan, to Singapore, to other places, and you will see a great dismay. But I think the global shadow it casts on China's own international commitments, I think this is most important. And perhaps we should now recall that the original 1984 agreement signed between then Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher and then Chinese Prime Minister Zhou Ziyang, which was registered in the UN. So this should now perhaps be, looked at. I mean, what does it mean if an agreement is registered in UN and its senates are not held up, are not held up by the countries who have committed to it? I think this does cast a very difficult shadow, and we have to look at it very carefully.
And on that, do you think that this new law, taking it further, will then degrade the exalted status that Hong Kong has enjoyed in terms of the global economy as a finance hub?
Yes, I think the trade aspect may not be so important because China has been able to move the trade to Shanghai and other places, and Hong Kong has a smaller proportion of China's external trade. But Hong Kong is still the 8th largest trading destination of the world. And Hong Kong, more than this, is the 4th largest stock exchange in the world. And there are many mainland China companies who have come to Hong Kong and registered on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange because it gives them access to the international financial markets. And after all, the Hong Kong currency is pegged to the US dollar as well. So it gives the Chinese companies a very great advantage to come to Hong Kong and register, and a lot of them have benefited from this. But after this law has been passed, the security and belief and trust in a free financial market in Hong Kong will certainly go down, and the people will not then give the same respect to companies who are registered on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange. They will not enjoy the same credibility that they have enjoyed survived so far. So I certainly think that as a financial center, Hong Kong's independence will be seriously affected. And because of this, it is the mainland Chinese companies who are registered on the Hong Kong stock market whose future will be affected. And they will not then have, and if there is also the question of how far UK will carry forward what Prime Minister Boris Johnson has said, and what the American government had been saying about them removing the special privileges that they have given to Hong Kong in every respect of trade and finance. So I mean, all these matters have come up very much because of this national security law that Hong Kong has adopted, which certainly is in contravention of the international commitments that they have taken repeatedly in '84, in 1990 when the Basic Law was adopted by their National People's Congress, in 1997 when they took over the sovereignty, in 2014, in 2019, and then now the adoption of this law in May 2020.
And moving on to the protesters and their actions, do you think that there will be a political outcome that obviously the protesters are hoping for or working towards from this civil unrest?
Well, yesterday when this law was adopted, a lot of the pro-democracy parties in Hong Kong, they began the process of withdrawing their political activity or deregistering, or they were worried, very worried. But as individuals, we see that they have now come out on the streets. Whether they are still affiliated with those political parties, but as individuals, they've certainly come out on the streets and they're very outspoken. Now, there have been some arrests. Are these arrests under the new national security law? This is not yet very clear, and I suppose it will be clarified in the next few days. But there have been arrests, and the people's right that had been given to them all these years to come out on the 1st of July and express their pro-democracy sentiments is being infringed. Now, how the Chinese mainland government and how the local, the HKSAR government will act on these things, something that we're going to see in the next few days. But certainly, I think it shows two things. While the political parties are taking care to sort of be careful not to have their political institutions affected. And then there's some uncertainty, but some people did say yesterday and day before that we are trying to, they didn't use the word deregister, but they did say that we are trying to withdraw from this political activity. But then the people coming out on the street today, being very, very bold indeed, and some of them having been arrested. What this augurs for the future is certainly going to be watched very carefully. It is a very difficult situation. But when the economic activity starts coming down, then I think mainland China will have to be very serious.
Veena, thank you very much for your time today. That is Veena Sikri. She is the former Indian envoy to Hong Kong, joining us for the latest on this national security law in China.